It was a warm summer afternoon in a quiet little town. The streets were mostly empty, birds chirped in the trees. The sun hung low, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. Outside a closed corner store, an older black man stood quietly. He looked about 60, maybe a little older. His clothes were clean but worn, and he held a small bag in one hand. He wasn't bothering anyone, just standing still like he was waiting. Then a police car turned the corner and slowed down. It rolled to a stop right in front of him. The officer inside stared for a moment, then opened the door and stepped out. His eyes narrowed as he looked at the man. Suspicion in every step. The town was quiet, but something was about to break that silence. What happened next would shock the entire community. The officer walked toward the man slowly, his hands resting near his belt. The man looked up at him calmly. His eyes were tired but steady. "Sir," the officer said, "what are you doing here? This store is closed." The man nodded. "Just waiting for the bus, officer. It should be here soon." The officer frowned. "You're just standing here. Loitering, that's against the law." The man's voice stayed soft and respectful. "I didn't mean to cause trouble. I'm just waiting." The officer looked him over and then asked, "Do you have ID on you?" The man reached into his jacket pocket slowly, then shook his head. "No, I don't carry it." The officer's face hardened. "You're going to have to come with me." The man didn't argue. He raised his hands slightly as the officer reached for handcuffs. People nearby stopped what they were doing. A few pulled out their phones and started recording. "Why are you arresting him?" one woman asked quietly. The man was calm as the officer snapped the handcuffs on. "I haven't done anything wrong," he said quietly. The officer didn't respond. He guided the man toward the patrol car. The crowd watched silently, some shaking their heads in disbelief. No one spoke loudly, but inside a question burned. Why was this man being treated like a criminal? The tension in the air was thick. Something didn't feel right. What the officer didn't realize yet, what the whole town would soon learn, was that this man was not just any man, he was someone very special. The officer opened the car door and helped the man into the back seat. The man sat quietly, hands still cuffed, eyes calm but tired. As the officer closed the door, a small bag slipped from the man's hand and fell to the ground. The officer bent down to pick it up, and tossed it into the back seat beside him. Inside the bag was a worn leather folder, some papers, and a few small objects that looked like badges. The officer glanced at them quickly, but didn't pay much attention. To him it was just stuff. He started the car and pulled away slowly. The man looked out the window, watching the streets pass by. His face was calm, but inside a story was waiting to be told, a story that no one expected. At the police station, the officer went to put the folder on the desk. He was bored and figured it wasn't important. But something made him open it. Inside were documents, papers with stamps and official seals. There were medals pinned to the folder, a Purple Heart, a Bronze Star. There was even a letter with the president's signature. The officer froze. He looked closer. The name on the papers was the same as the man he had just arrested, Luther Harris. He had no idea who Luther Harris really was. Before the officer could say anything, the door to the room opened. The police chief, a tall black woman with a serious expression, stepped in. She saw the folder, and her eyes went wide. "You arrested him?" she said, her voice sharp. The officer nodded slowly. "Luther Harris, the war hero." The police chief, Chief Monroe, stood silently, for a moment, staring at the folder in the officer's hands. Then she looked up at Officer Daniels, her eyes full of disbelief. "You mean to tell me you arrested Luther Harris for loitering?" Daniels swallowed hard. "Yes, ma'am. He didn't have ID, and he was just standing outside that closed store." Chief Monroe shook her head slowly. "Do you even know who he is?" Daniels admitted. "No, ma'am, I didn't recognize the name." The chief sighed and sat down at the desk. "Luther Harris is not just some man on the street. He's a decorated war veteran, a true American hero." She opened the folder and showed Daniels the medals, the Purple Heart for wounds he received in battle, the Bronze Star for bravery, and the papers proving his honorable discharge. There were also photos. Harris in uniform, standing proud beside his unit. Daniels looked at the pictures, feeling a knot tighten in his stomach. How could he have made such a mistake? Chief Monroe's voice softened, but stayed firm. You owe him an apology. Right now. Daniels nodded, ashamed. Yes, ma'am. The chief stood up and picked up the phone. Call the station, release Mr. Harris immediately, and prepare a public apology. The community deserves to know what happened. As Daniels sat there, the weight of the situation began to settle in. He thought about the older man sitting alone in a cell, wrongfully arrested. Meanwhile, outside the station, word was already spreading. Someone had shared the video of the arrest online. It was gaining attention fast. People were angry. Many had seen the man being treated unfairly, just for standing quietly. The story touched a nerve. It was more than just an arrest, it was about respect, justice, and how far we still have to go. The town was waking up, and Luther Harris, the humble veteran, was about to become the center of a conversation no one could ignore. The next day, Chief Monroe called Officer Daniels into her office. She sat behind her desk, her face serious, but calm. I want you to understand who Luther Harris really is, she said. He wasn't just a soldier, he was a leader, a man who saved lives. She told Daniels about her own time in the military, serving under Sergeant Harris in a dangerous war zone overseas. She described how Harris had risked everything to protect his team, how his courage saved countless lives. Daniels listened quietly. The image of the quiet, respectful man from the day before was nothing like the hero Chief Monroe described. He earned every medal, she said, but when he came home, things weren't the same. He faced the same judgment and suspicion as many black veterans. People saw the color of his skin before they saw his sacrifice. Daniels felt a heavy knot in his chest. He realized he had been quick to judge. I want you to meet Mr. Harris, the chief said. You need to apologize. Not just to him, but to the community. Daniels nodded. He wasn't sure how Mr. Harris would respond. As the story of the arrest spread, the video went viral. People all over the country were talking about it. Some were angry at the officer, others were proud of Mr. Harris. The town held a small gathering to honor Luther Harris. Chief Monroe spoke about justice and respect, reminding everyone about the sacrifices veterans make, especially those who don't always get recognized. Daniels stood quietly at the back, thinking about how wrong he had been. When he finally met Luther Harris face to face, the older man looked at him with steady eyes, neither angry nor bitter. Son, Mr. Harris said softly, it's not about me, it's about making sure this doesn't happen to the next man. Daniels nodded slowly. For the first time he understood. A few days after the town gathering, Officer Daniels found himself standing nervously on Mr. Harris's porch. He wasn't sure what to say, or how to say it. When Mr. Harris opened the door, Daniels saw a man who looked much older than the photos. His face was lined with years of hard work and struggle, but his eyes held a quiet strength. Come in, son, Mr. Harris said simply. Inside, the house was small and filled with memories, old photos, medals carefully displayed on the wall, letters from people thanking him for his service. Daniels took a seat, and finally spoke. I'm sorry, for everything. I didn't know who you were, but that's no excuse, I was wrong. Mr. Harris nodded slowly. I know, and I accept your apology. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Mr. Harris began to share his story, how he had fought in wars far from home, risking his life for a country that didn't always see him as equal. How coming back had been just as hard as the fighting. I didn't ask for medals to be treated like a king, he said. I wanted to be treated like a man. Daniels listened, really listened, for the first time. Mr. Harris looked at him and said, you have a chance to change things. To make sure no one else is treated the way I was. Daniels felt a deep weight in his heart. I will try, he said quietly. From that day, Daniels started showing up at local events, meeting with veterans, and learning about the struggles many of them faced. He spoke honestly with his fellow officers about respect and fairness. It wasn't easy. Some didn't want to change, but Daniels was determined, and it all began because one man, quietly waiting outside a closed store, reminded him what true honor looks like. Sometimes the smallest moments teach us the biggest lessons. Luther Harris didn't need medals to deserve respect, but too often, that respect is forgotten until it's shown in shiny awards. This story reminds us that behind every face, there is a life full of courage, pain, and sacrifice. Judging someone by how they look, or where they stand, can hide the truth we need to see. For Officer Daniels, a simple act of wrongful suspicion became a chance to learn and grow. For the town, it was a wake-up call about fairness and humanity. And for Luther Harris, it was a quiet reminder that dignity isn't given, it's earned every day, in every action. No one should ever have to prove their worth by the medals they wear. What happened that summer afternoon wasn't just about one man arrested for loitering, it was about how we all can do better, by seeing the person, not the label.